In this lecture, we will go over the classical theories of crime, which assume that crime is a choice. Cesare Bonesana Beccaria was an Italian philosopher, lawyer, and politician, and one of the first modern criminologists. From the time he was in his mid-20s, he worked with a circle of associates on reforming the criminal justice system in Italy. He knew that the Italian legal system of the 1700s was completely ineffective at controlling crime. Through his work, he found some reasons for this. The first one was that the laws were very vague, meaning that you could pretty much interpret them to mean anything you wanted. They were not clearly written. They did not state, this is not okay, but this is. They just said, this thing is bad. And then the judges, that led to corruption with the judges in the legal system, because then they could interpret the law any way they wanted to, and that meant that they could arbitrarily enforce the laws or not, meaning that if they had, say, a beggar sitting there in court who had done something wrong, they could put them in jail for 30 years. But if they had someone who was, say, the son of a prince, he got off with a slap on the wrist. Now, Beccaria's solutions to these problems drew from the work of several Enlightenment philosophers, including Thomas Hobbes. They argued that people are naturally rational pursuers of their own self-interest. This is also known as the rational actor. So if people understood that crime was not in their best interest, they would avoid it. As a result, the bedrock assumption that classical theory rests on is this rational actor, the person who weighs the pluses and the minuses, or the benefits and the costs of every single action before they take it. And although Beccaria and most thinkers of his time period assumed all human beings naturally do this, the sad fact is, most do not. Now, philosophers of the law define law as a social contract, where people agree to give up some of their freedom in order to be protected from other people exercising their own freedoms to the detriment of others. Crime is when people ignore the social contract and harm other people anyway. The entire Beccarian classical school assumes that people can be convinced not to commit a crime because it assumes that people are rational actors who can see that giving up some of their freedom in order to be protected from others being excessive with theirs will create the best outcomes for everybody. Now, the flip side of this is deterrence, which is the idea that if you know in advance that you're going to get 15 years in jail for doing what you want to do, then you won't do it. The knowledge of the punishment deters you, hence this is called deterrence. Beccaria argued that people will be deterred from crime if the pain associated with the punishment outweighs the pleasure associated with committing the crime. However, the problems Beccaria identified in the legal system of his day kind of throw a wrench in the effectiveness of this approach, because with vague laws, arbitrary enforcement, and corrupt judges, nobody could be sure what a punishment would be, or even that there would be a punishment. If deterrence is to work, individuals must believe that the law will punish them the same as other people in order for law to be effective in controlling crime. So in order to make deterrence work, Beccaria reasoned these three issues would have to be addressed. So the problem of the corrupt judges who arbitrarily enforced the law would have to be replaced with judges who would enforce laws consistently, regardless of who was being charged. Peasant and prince would have to know that they would all be held to the same standards, so justice would have to be blind. And blind justice means that justice should treat everyone the same way. Now, the fact that it still doesn't work in real life is a problem with the theory, but it's an issue that was real in Beccaria's time too, and he was demanding the legal system to require blind justice. And perhaps part of the reason that his theories don't work in the real world is because we still do not have this. The other thing is that if laws are vague, then the standards aren't clear, and individuals can't possibly make rational decisions about how they're behaving. So Beccaria's solution to this issue was to make the laws clear and the punishments swift, well-known, and certain. Otherwise, there's no way for individuals to even know what punishments will be. And again, that means that rational actors can't make rational choices about criminal behaviors. Although Beccaria's ideas made sense during the Enlightenment, more recent research in our modern day has shown that most human beings don't actually naturally weigh the cost and benefits of their decisions, which means that although the ideas sound really good in theory, they generally don't work out in practice.